Hello, everybody, and welcome back to First Ring Daily. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. CloudberryLab.com/FRD to grab that free trial offer because it will be going away here very soon, so make sure you do that. And unfortunately, Paul is still here.
I just used Cloudberry Backup to recover a PC to a virtual machine. It's true.
I was going to say enthusiastic, but that's an emotion, not really a word.
Yes. Well, the point being, just another avenue for disaster recovery. It's not something an individual would typically do with a PC, but it is the type of thing that a managed environment might do for a PC, a user with their PC, or maybe more appropriately, you might do with a server just to kind of recover something physical, to get at the data or to literally move it into the cloud, which is kind of interesting.
Interesting enough. A bunch of things going on today, Paul. One of the things is what I did yesterday, which I will not be doing for, it looks like based on the old weather dogs, at least for a week, if not longer.
Yeah. So what you need is a Photoshop skill that will change that green to white.
That is, I can't tell you how depressed I am about this. Emotionally.
Well, here, let me give you something to maybe laugh at. So I actually added this to the notes because I thought this was kind of funny. I've talked a lot about how in moving to Pennsylvania, I had hoped to have a milder winter than we had in Massachusetts every year, and that we would see like a month extra of spring at the beginning of spring and then a month more of fall at the end of fall, and it would be a better year overall. The month thing on either end of the seasons, I think, is actually still going to work out. I think it still works out that way. But man, this winter has been really, really tough. And it's been interesting because we have the neighbors in my circle who we know pretty well now. I have a couple of families worth of relatives who live here. And, we've started meeting people too. And it's always interesting when the whole move from Boston thing comes up. But I've heard from multiple people now, including my brother-in-law, for example, and some of our neighbors that this notion, you probably heard of this, that I brought the weather with me. In other words, the weather here was always better in the winter, and then you moved here. Thus, you are the thing that's you have somehow triggered this. And my neighbor was the guy who told me about how he was not going to move to Florida anymore because of global warming. And then I showed up and the winter went to shit. He told me the other day, he goes, "I think you might be a winter witch." He goes, I think you did this.
It's
like I'm cursed or something,
I don't think he's wrong. I'm saying when you lived in Boston, my springs were a lot better because I think today spring starts in, I think, officially 45 minutes.
It is a beautiful, crisp December day out there right now.
Yeah.
So
this is what I did yesterday late afternoon. This is a par 4. I actually didn't have a great drive, but we'll just recap this here. So I hit and landed somewhere right around over here. It was about a 240-yard drive. Actually, I was to the right of the cart path and then landed over there, and I ended up bogeying the hole, that's good for me. But I'm just more sad that this is like an anomaly rather than the rule at this point.
You could tomorrow go to the same location, except you could bring your skis.
Yeah.
And then you could ski down that little hill toward the hole.
We're supposed to get, I don't know what yours is up to. We're supposed to get 2 to 4 inches of snow. That's
2 to 4. Oh no, we're looking at 8 to 12.
Well,
this has gone downhill dramatically. At first it was 1 to 3, and then it was 5 to 8. I told my daughter this morning, I said, you can plan on being home tomorrow. There is this place cancels school when there's 0.6 inches of snow on the ground. If this thing comes in the way they're thinking it's going to, I mean, she could be off for the rest of the week, actually. I have no idea. But my only hope here is that the last storm was supposed to be tremendously bad, and it was for New England. But here we only got a couple of inches, and it disappeared in a few days. And I will use my witchly powers to make that happen. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Speaking of witchly powers, NVX2, Paul, tell us more.
Yeah, I was hoping to have it by now, actually. Usually these kind of deliveries come early in the morning, so now I'm suspicious. But supposedly I'm getting that Qualcomm-based HP NVX2 today sometime. This is the 2-in-1 computer with the foldable type cover that kind of covers it like an iPad Pro type cover and provides multiple typing angles and so forth. And when you look at the 3 available or soon to be available ARM-based PCs, which is this one, the Asus, and then the I don't know if it's the ThinkPad, the Lenovo device. I think this is the nicest one of the bunch, like the most PC-like in functionality and capabilities, and also in the kind of the premium design. And HP is positioning it against what I would call PC alternatives is kind of a tough term, but like the iPad Pro type device. In other words, most of the usage on this thing is going to be content consumption. You're going to be watching movies, you're going to be reading, but you need some form of productivity. And of course, the advantage there over an iPad Pro is that you get the keyboard, of course, but you get a real keyboard with backlighting and so forth. You get a real touchpad, and you get real Windows apps, Microsoft Office in particular. And that's a huge advantage over the toy Office apps you get on the iPad. And it's a huge advantage over the unbelievably difficult multitasking features on that platform, like absolutely non-discoverable and ridiculous multitasking functionality there. So, whether the market for this kind of thing exists is kind of questionable, but I think it's a fact to say that a lot of people now know that they can get a lot of work done on a phone, and that they only very occasionally need to turn to something that has a keyboard. And this could satisfy that demand. Plus, it has the always-on connectivity stuff that we've kind of had in the Windows world for a while on certain devices, but now it's kind of a more formal part of the platform. So we shall see.
The one thing I'm looking forward to, and unfortunately we won't know the answer for probably a while, is I want you to take that thing, use it for a couple hours, turn it off, and not touch it for 3 weeks, and then come back and pick it back up.
I have heard consistently from people who use this thing that it literally lasts for like a month. Like it just sits there and doesn't seem to drain the battery. Obviously, there's and so the advantage to this thing, and it's also the disadvantage depending on your needs, is the way that the ARM processor, and in particular the Qualcomm processors, are architected, where they have big cores for performance and small cores for efficiency. And so this is something we don't have in the Intel/x86/PC world until now. So on a typical PC processor, there are multiple cores, but they're all full-sized, full-power performance cores, as we would call it in the ARM, the mobile world. And what that means is that they sip more power when the thing is sleeping or when it's in a connected standby type mode. So when this thing is, the lid's shut and it's not doing anything, it's still connected, but it's using those efficiency cores, and that's why it drains so much less power. And those efficiency cores kick in during the course of the day. In normal usage, you sometimes need more power, and a lot of times you don't. There is one publication that I will not name, but it's called Laptop Magazine, who did performance benchmarks on this device, and that is patently stupid. The performance benchmarks are almost certainly x86 applications for starters, so they're running emulated. But even if they're native apps, which I don't believe they could be, running a PC full bore to determine what the performance like not only doesn't represent real world usage, but it actually subverts the advantages of this processor type. Because like I said, this thing is kicking in and out of using efficiency and or performance cores in the course of a normal daily workload. So what you're basically doing is forcing it to run full bore on just 2 performance cores. And you're not going to get good performance, in numbers. In other words, benchmarks are always kind of artificial. And so if you compare whatever those numbers are to what you might get with a typical PC, of course, they're going to be smaller. But I think the real measure of this thing's performance, real world, is going to be how it actually works. And so there are 2 sides to that. There's the native apps that run on the store, which, is whatever, Windows 10s. But I have to put it into Pro mode to test how it runs Chrome. Yep. Actual x86 apps. And so very, very curious to see what that looks like, what the performance really is, and of course, whether or not that impacts battery life.
Yeah, no, these are all great questions, because that's going to kind of be what everyone's wondering is, right, is they make a lot of promises, and we've only really ever gotten our hands on these things in isolated, kind of controlled environments, sometimes much warmer than here and along a beachside.
Sunnier and less snowy.
Yeah, with warm tropical breezes.
Desperately every single day. Yes.
Yeah. But, this will be interesting. Also, things that are interesting right now is, Paul, I think it's fair to say this podcast is now running pretty smoothly. Wouldn't you tend to agree?
Yeah, I think what you should do is take a big metal rod and just jam it into the spokes of the whole operation and just change everything up. Because as far as I can tell, it's kind of been working lately.
Yeah, and
so
that
obviously
might happen.
That's what you're going to do.
I, I was
I
joking.
know you
with,
well enough to know.
Yeah, I was. Anybody who's watched this, we always talk about how we just kind of screw with things that are working too well, and that's kind of the case. The biggest reason is that I kind of want to move like my personal office, which is on the other side of this laptop, upstairs, and we have an extra
so will you
bedroom.
keep a podcast studio kind of thing down there?
Yeah. I wouldn't
And then
move
you
the
actually-
podcast studio would all stay here, but because I'm not rebringing this. My wife would kill me if I unhooked all this stuff and like put this just in a bedroom upstairs.
Yeah.
We don't have that large of a house, but we have a spare bedroom. We have a 3-bedroom house. We have a kid and myself and my wife. We have an extra bedroom. And it's like, man, I would love to just take one of these desks and put it up there, but that would require kind of unhooking everything and changing everything up, swapping some PCs around. We will see and as I showed to Paul earlier this morning, because I got it in writing from my wife, I thought we were getting a dog this summer. And so that part of the reason why going upstairs would make sense is that if you have a dog, I can't be working downstairs and letting the mutt just roam free or sit in a cage for 8 hours. I would need to be up there to make sure it's not actively destroying stuff. And my wife responded back saying, I say a lot of things.
Right. Right. Which is beautiful, by the way. I also recommended to you at the time that you hold this as evidence for when your daughter has the inevitable meltdown when she finds out she's not getting a dog, where you can say, hey, it was mom's fault. It's important to have that kind of leverage over a spouse.
Yeah. If I had a printer, I'd actually print this out and put it on the fridge.
Put it on the refrigerator.
But I don't have a printer or care to have a fight with my wife. So
Fair enough.
You win some, you lose some. There's a lot of nothing going on. Microsoft has some announcements later today related to server design. Probably by the time this podcast goes up, if you're very interested in podcast, man, I need to just quit while I'm behind. If you're interested in server design, check out Petri, because I'll have a post up on that side. But it's pretty nitty gritty on the details.
Okay.
So, you got anything else for today, Paul? Before
Yeah, I'm still behind on the same things I was always behind on for the past week. So Andrew moved the What the Tech podcast to Thursday. So I'm going to try to spend this afternoon catching up and preparing for the Category 5 death storm that's going to strike Pennsylvania overnight. I saw like the winter warning. Like I said to you earlier, it's been getting worse over time. And I looked at it this morning first thing, and it said, it starts at 6 p.m. and it ends at 8 p.m. And I thought, oh, well, that's nothing. This is going to be great. Oh, no. And I mentioned it to my wife, and she says, you might want to look at that again. So I looked at it again, and it does start at 6 p.m. and it does end at 8 p.m., but it ends at 8 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or the next day. Yeah, which is tomorrow. Great. And actually the near certainty of snow is worse starting tomorrow morning at roughly 8 a.m. So tomorrow is going to be a shit show, I think is the only way to say it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got nothing positive to say on that front.
I know. How about you? What do you, other than preparing with, milk and eggs and whatever, crushed sand or whatever?
I got nothing. I have nothing. It's going to be spring and it's going to snow, and that is against my religion and my personal beliefs that when it's spring, it doesn't snow. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. The trees are budding, Brad. They're budding. I can see them from my house.
Like my neighbor's tree across the street, I think it's an oak tree. Maybe not an oak tree. It's a massive tree, probably 70, 80 years old. Beautiful tree. And the leaves are starting to show up. And if that thing dies because of this winter, I will stab a coal plant.
We had this really fragile tree that used to bud in this beautiful white flowerage, every spring back in Dedham, and it's been falling apart over the years. We've been really careful about it. We never let the kids climb in it or anything, and we've had to cut it back because parts of it were dying. But we had that winter 3 years ago where we had 6 feet of snow on the ground, and that tree didn't bud that year at all, which was the first and only time that had ever happened in the 15 years we were in the house. But it never really recovered either. Like the subsequent two springs, it kind of came out and went really quick. Like it was kind of never returned to its former luster. And that kind of stuff is really dangerous. And that's a big problem. It's not just, obviously like in places where they grow things, it could be a problem with whatever crop as well. But I mean, just for general tree health, it's, it could be pretty serious depending on the tree.
So I'm actually, my bigger concern, I was talking with my wife, other than the dog thing, was that we're going to go from snow to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Like there's going to be no spring.
What?
Like,
oh, you think that? Oh, in other words, because of the, I see what you're saying.
It's just going to be cold, 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 and then it's going to be too hot.
So I know from personal experience with myself over the many years, and also just from what happened about 2 weeks ago when it was freezing, and then suddenly it was really nice. I had this day where I was like, literally the first day it was warm, I was like, it's a little too hot. Like never happy, no matter what it is. But I would prefer heat over cold, I think.
Yeah, until
having to choose,
Yeah. Yeah, until it's August, and then we're complaining that it's too hot.
Yeah.
That's First String Daily, folks, where we're never happy.
Exactly, we're never happy. I think that's a great headline or title or whatever.
All right, you got anything else for today, Paul?
No, we do not.
All right, good. Because I'm done talking to you. And Miracast is still working. Congratulations, Miracast.
Ooh, see, it's not all broken.
Just on the inside. All right, folks, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD. And we'll be right back here tomorrow, because tomorrow is Wednesday. And have yourselves a wonderful snow-filled evening, if that's going to happen with you. Great exit, Brad.